I wish I was a Boston Celtics fan. I really do. I'm an Atlanta Hawks fan, a Toronto Raptors fan, a Denver Nuggets fan, a Detroit Pistons fan, a Portland Trail Blazers fan, and an OKC fan. For those of you that don't know, most of my favorite teams haven't been really successful much in NBA history, especially lately, except for one team, and that team is the Detroit Pistons. They won 3 rings in franchise history. Yeah, my favorite teams made some playoff appearances this decade and the last decade, but that's about it. Nothing more than that. For example, the Atlanta Hawks never go over the hump, and the franchise has never won a ring in 59 years. The last time the Hawks won a ring, they went under the name St. Louis Hawks back in 1958 when they were located in St. Louis, and they are in a rebuilding mode this season, so it might take years to get things clicking again. The Toronto Raptors are one of the youngest franchises in the NBA. They are only 22 years old. They made a debut in 1995. The furthest the Toronto Raptors went in franchise history was to the Eastern Conference Finals back in 2016, where they lost to the Cleveland Cavaliers in 6 games. The Denver Nuggets haven't been to the playoffs in 4 years, and the franchise has never won a ring. The Portland Trail Blazers never won a championship in 40 years, since 1977, and to be honest, they won't be winning one anytime soon, unless there's major changes that happen in the franchise, because the West is so deep. The Oklahoma City Thunder, who is actually the Seattle Supersonics, never won a ring in the last 38 years, since 1979. The furthest OKC went was to the finals this decade, back in 2012, but they never won the ring, and we all know that they lost to the Miami Heat, but they never made it to the finals since then. They did manage to make it to the Western Conference Finals 2 times after their finals appearance, in 2014 and in 2016, and they made it to the Western Conference Finals a total of 4 times this decade. Even though the Detroit Pistons have won 3 rings in franchise history, I wasn't even born to witness them win it back-to-back in 1989 and in 1990, and when they won a ring in 2004, I was just too young, so the experience wouldn't be as great of an experience like now if they won a ring in present time. Me being in my 20s, because we all know as we age, experiences get better because we have more knowledge of things as adults. The Detroit Pistons only made 1 playoff appearance this decade. If you weren't a Boston fan, you would assume that Boston fans have nothing to complain about, right? Due to what the franchise has been able to accomplish over the years in the NBA. But that's not the case. A lot of Boston fans complain. And to some degree I understand why, because who would want their team to go through any bad trials? But to be honest, Boston fans are the most blessed fans in the NBA. They are actually spoiled. You'll see why later on in this video. I'm not trying to take shots at Boston fans. I'm trying to bring it to the people's attention of how blessed they are. In this video, I'll be talking about Danny Ainge's contribution to the Boston Celtics franchise. He deserves a lot of credit. Once again, it's Third Eye View 195 coming at you with my intellect. Stay tuned. We are going to be taking it back a little bit on this one. Danny Ainge was drafted at number 31 in the 2nd round in the 1981 NBA draft by the Boston Celtics, and he played for 8 seasons with the Boston Celtics from 1981 to 1989. He just missed out on winning an NBA championship because a couple of months prior to him being drafted, the Boston Celtics won a championship, which would be Larry Bird's first ring. But that's okay because Danny Ainge went on to win 2 championships with the Boston Celtics in 1984 and in 1986. He played a big part in Boston winning those rings back then. He was no scrub. Throughout the whole 1986 playoffs, Danny averaged throughout 18 games 15.6 points per game, 2.3 steals per game, 5.2 assists per game, 4.2 rebounds per game, shooting 86.7% from the free throw line and 41.2% from the 3-point line and 55.4% from the field, playing 36.2 minutes per game. So there you go, he wasn't no scrub. He played a big role in Boston's success during the Larry Bird era. And here's all of his averages during his playoff runs with the Boston Celtics. Take this in too. The best regular season he had with the Boston Celtics statistically, he averaged 15.9 points per game. Here's his averages in the regular season throughout his playing career with the Boston Celtics. His best scoring season he's had in his career was with the Sacramento Kings when he left Boston. He averaged 20.3 points per game. Here's his averages with other teams that he played for after he left the Boston Celtics in the regular season and in the playoffs. So this is evident that he was no scrub as a player, even when he was playing without multiple All-Stars. When he did with the Boston Celtics, he played with Dennis Johnson, who was a 5-time All-Star, Kevin McHale, who was a 7-time All-Star, Larry Bird, who was a 12-time All-Star, and Danny Ainge was an All-Star himself in 1988. So based just off of this, Boston fans should give Danny Ainge a lot of credit, but not just for this. In 2003, Danny Ainge was hired to be the executive director of basketball operations for the Boston Celtics. He's also the general manager. Boston fans get on Danny Ainge's case for not giving away draft picks and current players for Jimmy Butler and Paul George. But I don't see what the problem is. Danny Ainge just pulled off the unthinkable. He got Kyrie in a trade with Cleveland this summer for Jay Crowder, Ante Zizic, Isaiah Thomas, and a 2020 second round pick. Cleveland tried to lowball the Celtics by getting Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown in the deal, but it didn't work out in Cleveland's favor. Cleveland knew they had to trade Kyrie, because if they didn't trade Kyrie, it would cause a negative impact on the court and in the locker room. So the deal had to be done. In my opinion, Boston won this deal. I mean, think about it. You get rid of a 28-year-old, about to turn 29 soon, that's expecting a max contract, that's a defensive liability, that's seriously injured at the moment, and that person is Isaiah Thomas. No disrespect to him, he's a great player, but that's the truth. We all know how great he is offensively, but that's just all he is. He's one-dimensional, and that's not his fault. It's due to his 5'9" stature. Plus, Boston was attractive enough for Gordon Hayward to want to come there as a free agent this summer, and Al Horford as an unrestricted free agent last year in the summer. Don't tell me that Danny Ainge wasn't a big part of that, because there's meetings and a lot of pitching that has to go on behind the scenes to try and convince a player into playing for your franchise and why your franchise is the best destination for them to come to instead of another franchise. And this is why you see most of the higher-ups in the franchise come around when it's media day, when a new player signs to the team to present them to the sports world. Boston had a chance to make a move on DeMarcus Cousins when he was available in trade talks with the Sacramento Kings earlier on this year, but they didn't make the move. That's a smart choice because there's a lot of risks that come with DeMarcus Cousins. And I'm being objective here. He's one of my top 10 favorite players. And I'm telling you that there's a lot of risks that come with him being on your roster. I see why Danny Ainge is holding on to draft picks and not trading them. Over these past few years, Boston has been drafting good in my opinion. They drafted Avery Bradley in 2010 at number 19 in the first round, but he's gone now. He got traded for Marcus Morris this past summer. Marcus Smart, who was drafted in 2014 at number 6. He's not the best offensive player, but he's very good defensively. He's one of the best versatile defenders in the league. And he was a big part of why Boston made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Because they're a gritty team and it's their defense that got them there, including other aspects as well. Also, Jaylen Brown, who was drafted number 3 in the 2016 NBA draft, and Jason Tatum, who was drafted number 3 overall in this year's NBA draft. And look at how good Jason and Jaylen are playing. Jason is averaging 13.5 points per game, 1.8 assists per game, and 6 rebounds per game, shooting 83.3% from the free throw line, 52.9% from the three-point line, and 50% from the field, playing 29.8 minutes per game in just 12 games. And Jaylen, on the other hand, is averaging 14.8 points per game, 6.8 rebounds per game, shooting 38.2% from the three-point line and 44.7% from the field, playing 31.7 minutes per game in just 12 games. They are showing their star potential, which is good, in Gordon Hayward's absence, after he suffered a gruesome injury in Game 1 against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And for those of you that are saying that they're only playing this good because Gordon Hayward is out, that's just silly, because they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. When a star player goes down, you play good to support the team, to help them win. Plus, Boston signed Brad Stevens on July 3rd in 2013 from Butler University, a good head coach, after Doc Rivers left to go coach at the Los Angeles Clippers. Since Brad Stevens' arrival in Boston, the Celtics have went to the playoffs 3 times, except for the playoffs in 2014, Brad Stevens' first season. Boston is currently on a 10-game winning streak after losing the first 2 games to Cleveland to start the season and Milwaukee in the second game. They haven't lost since. This is the first time in NBA history a team has won so much games in a row after losing their first 2 regular season games. If Gordon Hayward never got injured, we would see how great Boston could be. And I know this sounds crazy, and I wouldn't agree with anybody saying this a couple of weeks ago. They are good enough to challenge the Cleveland Cavaliers. The organization is just headed in the right direction, and that's because of Danny Ainge. Not just him, but he's a big part of their success or failure, whichever direction things go. To me, he just never gets a fair shake. When he traded Antoine Walker, people nicknamed him Trader Dan. And after Paul Pierce voiced his frustration with the organization after going 24-58 in the 2006-2007 season, he requested a trade if things didn't start happening right away to change the organization around. And guess who came and saved the day? That's right, Danny Ainge. He went out and got Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to pair with Paul Pierce, and Boston was introduced with the new Big Three. Danny traded away their number 5th pick, Jeff Green, Wally Szczerbiak, and Delonte West to Seattle for Ray Allen, and Seattle's 2nd round pick, which the team used to select Glenn Davis, known as Big Baby Davis. And to get Kevin Garnett, Boston traded away Ryan Gomez, Gerald Green, Al Jefferson, Theo Ratliff, and Sebastian Telfair to Minnesota, and flipped the 2009 first round draft picks for Kevin Garnett. In the next season, the Boston Celtics would make the biggest turnaround in NBA history. In the 2007-2008 season, they won 66 games and lost 16 games. Plus, they went on to win the championship, beating the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals in Game 6. But that's it for the video, guys. I just wanted to shed some light on Danny Ainge and how much he's done in the Boston Celtics organization. Obviously, not all Boston fans are like this, and like I always say, please like and subscribe and hit that notification button and comment below and tell me what you think. Your opinion matters. Peace.
As he gon' show him what to do, yeah. As he rollin' with a small crew, yeah. As he never